The cowboy stood in the doorway, dust still settling from his boots, holding every single loaf of bread from her shop. "I'll buy your heart, too," Jack Carter declared to the stunned baker, his weathered hands trembling as he laid silver dollars on her flour-dusted counter. Eliza Monroe had seen desperate men before, but never one who'd gamble everything on fresh bread and a stranger's smile. Welcome to Silver Creek, 1878, where hunger led to the most unexpected love story. Comment your city below. Let's see how far this tale travels. The sun hung mercilessly over Silver Creek that July afternoon, baking the dirt streets until they cracked like old leather. Jack Carter had been riding for 3 days straight, his throat parched, his stomach gnawing at itself with a hunger that went deeper than food. The Colorado Territory stretched endless behind him, and ahead lay a town he'd never planned to enter, just another dot on a map he kept folded in his saddlebag. His horse, a faithful bay mare named Rosie, picked her way down Main Street with the careful steps of exhaustion. Jack's eyes, the color of storm clouds over prairie grass, scanned the storefronts through the haze of heat. The Lucky Dollar Saloon, Henderson's General Store, a barber shop with a striped pole that had seen better days. And then the scent hit him like a physical force. Fresh bread. Not the hard tack he'd been gnawing for weeks. Not the stale biscuits from his last stop in Pueblo. Real bread, warm and yeasty, floating on the air like a promise of home he'd never had. "Easy, Rosie," he murmured, though it was himself he was steadying. He dismounted outside a modest shop with yellow curtains in the windows and a hand-painted sign that read, "Monroe's Bakery, fresh daily." The bell above the door sang out his arrival, and Jack had to duck slightly to clear the doorframe. Inside, the world transformed. Golden loaves lined wooden shelves. The air itself tasted of wheat and butter. Sunlight filtered through those yellow curtains, casting everything in amber warmth. And behind the counter stood a woman who made him forget why he'd walked in. She wasn't beautiful in the way of saloon girls with their painted faces and practiced smiles. Eliza Monroe possessed something far more dangerous: authenticity. Flour dusted her auburn hair where it had escaped from its practical bun. Her sleeves were rolled to her elbows, revealing forearms strong from years of kneading. When she looked up at him, her eyes, the exact shade of honey in sunlight, held neither fear nor fascination, just patient expectation. "Can I help you?" Her voice carried a slight Irish lilt, probably second generation, Jack guessed. He stood there, 6 feet of trail-worn cowboy, suddenly aware of every speck of dust on his clothes, every day of stubble on his jaw. "Bread," he managed. "I need bread." A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "Well, you've come to the right place. How many loaves?" Jack's hand went to his pocket, feeling the weight of his pay from the last cattle drive. 3 months of work, compressed into silver dollars. He looked at the shelves, counting. 12 loaves. His eyes went back to her face, to the small smudge of flour on her left cheek that she seemed unaware of. "All of them." She blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Every loaf. I'll take them all." Eliza's hand stilled on the counter. "Sir, that's 12 loaves. Unless you're feeding an army—" "My crew," Jack heard himself lie. "Cattle crew, just outside town. Been on the trail for weeks. The boys are mighty hungry." She studied him then, really looked at him. Jack felt exposed under that gaze, as if she could see through the lie to something deeper. The loneliness that had driven him off the trail, the restlessness that no amount of writing could cure. 12 loaves, she said slowly. "That'll be $3. Jack pulled out a $5 gold piece and set it on the counter. "Keep the change." "That's far too much." "Ma'am, the smell alone is worth $5 to a man who's been eating dust and jerky for 3 days straight." She picked up the coin, examining it as if checking its authenticity. Then she began wrapping the loaves in brown paper with quick, efficient movements. Jack watched her hands, noticed the absence of a wedding ring, noticed the way she bit her lower lip slightly when concentrating. "You new to Silver Creek?" she asked without looking up. "Just passing through." "Most cowboys are." There was something in her tone, not quite disappointment, not quite resignation. "Where you headed?" "Nowhere in particular." She paused in her wrapping. "That's an odd destination." "It's the only honest one I've got." Their eyes met across the counter, and something shifted in the air between them. Eliza resumed her work, but slower now, as if she too wanted to extend this moment. Your accent, Jack said. Irish? My parents were. From County Cork, you? Texas originally, though I haven't seen it in 5 years. Family there? No family anywhere. She handed him the first wrapped loaves. Their fingers brushed in the exchange, and Jack felt it like lightning through his whole body. Eliza pulled back quickly, but not before he saw the flush creep up her neck. That must be lonely, she said quietly. You get used to it. Do you? She challenged him with those honey eyes. Or do you just tell yourself that until you believe it? Jack had no answer for that. He gathered the loaves, needing 3 trips to carry them all. Each time he returned, she was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. Your crew must be very hungry, she observed as he collected the last packages. Ravenous, he agreed, though the lie sat heavy in his chest. Well then, she wiped her hands on her apron. I hope they enjoy them. I make fresh batches every morning if you need more. Every morning? Every morning except Sunday. Shop opens at 6. Jack stood in the doorway, arms full of bread he didn't need, looking back at a woman he couldn't leave. What's your name? Eliza Monroe. Jack Carter. He touched the brim of his hat with his free hand. Thank you for the bread, Miss Monroe. It's what I do, Mr. Carter. Outside, Jack loaded the loaves into his saddlebags, keeping one out. He sat on the wooden bench outside her shop and tore into it, the steam still rising from its center. It was the best bread he'd ever tasted, though he suspected that had less to do with her baking skills, considerable as they were, and more to do with the woman who'd made it. Through the window, he could see her moving about the shop, tidying shelves, wiping down the counter. Once, she glanced outside and caught him watching. Instead of looking away, she held his gaze for a long moment before returning to her work. Jack finished the entire loaf, then walked back to Rosie. Girl, I think we're in trouble, he told the mare, who snorted in response. He mounted up and rode out of town, but only as far as the creek that gave the town its name. There, hidden by cottonwoods, he made camp. He gave 3 loaves to a Mexican family he found camped nearby, their children's eyes lighting up at the unexpected feast. 2 more went to an old prospector who lived in a shack by the water. By evening, he'd distributed all but 2 of the loaves to whoever he could find, keeping the last for his breakfast. That night, lying under stars that seemed especially bright, Jack tried to make sense of what had happened. He'd been drifting since the war ended, 13 years of movement that never felt like progress. Town after town, job after job, always looking for something he couldn't name. But in that bakery, for those few minutes, the searching had stopped. You're being a damn fool, he told himself. You don't know anything about her. She could be spoken for. She could want nothing to do with a saddle tramp like you. But the memory of her eyes wouldn't leave him. The way she'd challenged him about loneliness, the flower on her cheek, the strength in her hands. The next morning, Jack was outside Monroe's bakery when Eliza arrived to open up. She stopped when she saw him, keys in hand. Mr. Carter, your crew must have enjoyed the bread. Tremendously, he said. In fact, they sent me back for more. She unlocked the door and he followed her in. How many loaves today? How many do you have? She turned to face him fully. Mr. Carter, I don't know what game you're playing. No game. He removed his hat, holding it in both hands. I gave away the bread yesterday, to families who needed it, but I bought it because... He struggled for words that wouldn't sound crazy. Because I wanted a reason to talk to you. You could have just talked to me. It would have been considerably less expensive. Would you have listened to a dusty cowboy with nothing to offer but conversation? She moved behind the counter, lighting the lamp there. I'm listening now. I'd like to buy you dinner. I don't know you. That's the point of dinner, to get to know each other. I don't go to dinner with strange men who buy all my bread. Then have dinner with me and I promise to buy only what I need from now on. She pulled on her apron, tying it with practiced movements. I work until 6. I'll wait. You'll wait? All day? Miss Monroe, I've been waiting all my life, though I didn't know it until yesterday. What's one more day? She turned away, but not before he caught her smile. There's a bench outside. I noticed. Mrs. Henshaw across the street will gossip if she sees you sitting there all day. Let her. Eliza began pulling dough from the rising bowls she'd prepared the night before. I haven't said yes to dinner. But you haven't said no. Mr. Carter, Jack. Jack. His name on her lips sounded like music. Why me? He thought about how to answer that, how to explain the pull he'd felt the moment he saw her, the sense of recognition, as if his soul had said, "Oh, there you are. I've been looking for you." "Because you have flour on your cheek again," he said instead. "And you don't know it. Because you asked if I was lonely, and meant it. Because you make bread that tastes like home, even to a man who's never had one." She reached up, wiping at her cheek with the back of her hand. "I can't promise anything. I'm not asking for promises. Just dinner." "Fine. One dinner, but not at the saloon." "Wherever you want." "There's a respectable restaurant at the hotel. Mrs. Pritchard's place." 6 o'clock? 6:30. I need time to clean up. Jack put his hat back on. I'll be there. He turned to leave, then stopped. Eliza? Yes? Thank you. For what? I haven't done anything yet. For not throwing me out, for listening, for having flour on your cheek. This time her laugh followed him out the door, warm as fresh bread. Jack spent the day making himself useful around town. He helped old Murphy fix his wagon wheel. He chopped wood for the widow Patterson in exchange for a bath and a shave at her boarding house. He even bought a new shirt from Henderson's, crisp and white. Nothing fancy, but clean. Word traveled fast in a town like Silver Creek. By noon, everyone seemed to know about the cowboy who'd bought all of Monroe's bread. By 3, they knew about the dinner. Mrs. Henshaw held court outside the millinery shop, speculating loudly about that poor Monroe girl and that drifter's intentions. Jack encountered Eliza's brother before he met the man properly. Thomas Monroe was built like a boxer, compact and solid, with the same auburn hair as his sister, but none of her warmth. He cornered Jack outside the barber shop. "You're the one taking my sister to dinner." "If she'll have me, yes." "She's not some saloon girl to trifle with." "I know exactly who she is." "Do you? Because from where I stand, you're just another cowboy passing through. Eliza's had enough of those." Jack met his stare steadily. "I'm not passing through anymore." "Since when?" "Since yesterday, about 2 in the afternoon." Thomas studied him for a long moment. "You hurt her, and I'll hurt you. Simple as that." "Fair enough." "She's all I've got left, Carter. Our parents died 2 years back. Fever, that bakery is everything to her. I'm not looking to take anything from her." "What are you looking for, then?" Jack considered the question. "A reason to stop running." Something in Thomas's expression shifted. "Just remember what I said." At 6:30 sharp, Jack stood outside the hotel restaurant. He'd been there for 20 minutes already, watching the sun paint the mountains gold. When Eliza appeared, he forgot how to breathe. She'd changed into a simple blue dress that brought out hints of green in her eyes. Her hair was pinned up properly now, though a few rebellious strands still framed her face. She looked nervous, beautiful, and absolutely perfect. "You clean up well," she said. "So do you. Though I missed the flour. Give me 5 minutes with dough, and I can arrange that." He offered his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. The restaurant was nearly full, and Jack felt every eye track them to their table. Eliza held her head high, though he noticed the slight tension in her shoulders. "They're all staring," she murmured as they sat. "Let them. They're just jealous." "Of what?" "The men are jealous of me. The women are jealous of you." "Why would anyone be jealous of me?" "Because you're having dinner with the mysterious stranger who bought all your bread. You'll be the talk of the town for weeks." "Wonderful. Just what I needed." Mrs. Pritchard herself came to take their order, her curiosity barely contained behind professional courtesy. They ordered roast beef and potatoes, nothing fancy, but it smelled wonderful. "So," Eliza said once they were alone, "tell me about this cattle crew of yours." Jack winced. "You knew. 12 loaves for a cattle crew that's somehow invisible to everyone in town? Yes, I knew." "Are you angry?" "I should be, but mostly I'm curious. Why the elaborate lie?"
Would you believe I panicked? You looked at me and every sensible thought flew out of my head. All I knew was I needed a reason to stay in that shop, to keep talking to you. So you bought 12 loaves of bread. It seemed logical at the time. She laughed, really laughed, and the sound loosened something in Jack's chest. That might be the least logical thing I've ever heard. I've done worse. I find that hard to believe. Their food arrived and they ate in comfortable conversation. Jack told her about his years on the trail, sanitizing the rougher parts but keeping the truth of it, the freedom and the loneliness, the beauty and the danger. She told him about coming west with her parents, about learning to bake from her mother, about taking over the shop when they died. It wasn't supposed to be my life, she admitted. I was going to be a school teacher, had a position lined up in Denver, but then they got sick and Tommy needed help and she shrugged. Life had other plans. Do you regret it? Some days. When my hands are raw from kneading, when the accounts won't balance, when I'm up at 4 a.m. to start the ovens. But then someone comes in, someone who really needs that bread, and their face lights up when they smell it, and I remember why it matters. It matters, Jack said firmly, more than you know. It's just bread. No, it's not. It's comfort. It's home. It's something good in a world that often isn't. He reached across the table, not quite touching her hand, but close. It brought me to you. She looked at their almost touching hands. Jack, what are you doing here? Really? I don't know, he admitted. I rode into town planning to water my horse and move on. Then I smelled your bread, saw you standing there with flour in your hair and challenge in your eyes, and something in me just stopped. Like I'd been holding my breath for years and could finally exhale. That's not an answer. Then here's one. I'm 32 years old. I've been drifting since I was 19. I've worked cattle drives from Texas to Montana, mined silver in Nevada, even rode shotgun for a stage line in Arizona. I've seen sunrise over the Rockies and sunset over the desert, and none of it ever made me want to stop moving. Until yesterday. And you think that feeling will last, based on one conversation in a bakery? I think it's worth finding out. She pulled her hand back. I can't be someone's experiment, Jack. I can't be the thing you try before you decide to drift again. That's not what this is. Then what is it? He was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. My mother used to tell me that some people are landmarks. No matter how far you wander, they call you back. They become your definition of where home is. I've been looking for my landmark since she died. Yesterday, I think I found it. Eliza's eyes glistened. That's a lot to put on a stranger. You're not a stranger. I don't know how to explain it better than that. The moment you asked if I was lonely, it was like you saw straight through me, like you knew me. I did know you, she said quietly. You're every cowboy who's passed through this town, full of pretty words and promises, staying just long enough to break someone's heart before the trail calls again. I'm not, aren't you? How many towns have you left behind, Jack? How many people have watched you ride away? The truth of it stung. Too many, he admitted, but none of them made me want to stay. And I do? You do. Why? Because you're not impressed by me. Because you see through my lies but don't judge me for them. Because you're strong enough to run a business and raise your brother and still have kindness left for strangers. Because when you smile, really smile, it's like watching the sun come up. She was quiet for a long time, pushing food around her plate. I was engaged once, she finally said, to a cowboy, actually. He stayed in town for 3 months, courted me properly, convinced me he was done with the trail. 2 weeks before the wedding, he disappeared. Left a note saying he couldn't do it, couldn't be tied down. Eliza, I'm telling you this so you understand. I won't go through that again. If you're staying, you're staying. If you're going, go now before... She trailed off. Before what? Before I do something stupid like believe you. Jack stood up, pulled out money for the meal, then extended his hand to her. Walk with me. Where? Just walk with me. Please. She let him help her up, let him lead her out of the restaurant despite the whispers that followed. They walked in silence down Main Street, past the closed shops, past the saloon spilling light and music into the night. He led her to where Rosie was tied outside the boarding house. This is everything I own, he said, gesturing to his saddlebags.
Bedroll, spare clothes, a gun I hope never to use again, and about $40. It's not much to offer someone. Jack, but I also have two hands that know how to work, a back that's strong enough for whatever needs doing, and a heart that's been waiting 32 years to find a reason to stop running. He turned to face her fully. I can't promise I'll be easy to live with. I have nightmares sometimes from the war. I get restless when the weather changes. I've been alone so long I might forget how to be with someone. But I can promise that if you give me a chance, I'll wake up every morning trying to deserve it. That's a pretty speech. It's not a speech, it's the truth. She studied his face in the lamplight. If I say yes to another dinner, just dinner, will you stop buying all my bread? If that's what you want. And if I say no to anything more, then I'll thank you for the dinner and the honesty, and I'll move on. Just like that? No, he admitted. Not just like that, but I'll do it because staying here unwanted would be worse than leaving. She was quiet for so long he thought she'd made her decision. Then, tomorrow's Sunday. I don't work Sundays. I know. There's a place I go, up the creek path, to think, to be alone. Sounds peaceful. I'll be there around 10, after church. She started walking away, then turned back. I'm not inviting you, Jack Carter, but I'm not inviting you either. I understand. She left him standing there with Rosie, watching her disappear into the darkness. Jack leaned against the mare's warm shoulder. I think that went well, he told the horse. Or terribly. I honestly can't tell. That night in his rented room, Jack lay awake thinking about landmarks and loneliness, about the difference between drifting and choosing. He'd told Eliza the truth. He'd been running since his mother died, since the war took his father and brothers, since everything that meant home became memory. But running was all momentum, no purpose. It was existence without living. In the morning, he attended church for the first time in years, sitting in the back row, watching Eliza in her Sunday best singing hymns with her brother. She didn't look at him once, but he saw the slight flush on her neck that said she knew he was there. After the service, he waited until the congregation dispersed, then headed up the creek path. He found her exactly where she'd said she'd be, sitting on a flat rock beside a pool where the water ran quiet and deep. She'd changed out of her church clothes into a simple cotton dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. You came, she said without looking up. You're surprised? A little. He sat beside her, careful to leave space between them. It's beautiful here. My mother found it when we first arrived. She said it reminded her of a place in Cork where she used to go to dream. What did she dream about? America, opportunity, freedom, love. Eliza picked up a smooth stone, running her thumb over its surface. She met my father on the ship coming over, said she knew by the time they reached New York that he was the one. Do you believe in that, knowing so quickly? I didn't. She looked at him then. Tell me about your mother. She was a teacher before she married my father, taught me to read using the Bible and whatever books she could find. She had this laugh that could fill a whole house. When the war came, she held everything together. When it ended, when we lost everyone, she just gave up. Died 6 months after Appomattox. I'm sorry. I left the next day. Couldn't stand being in that empty house, on that land soaked with so much blood. I've been moving ever since. Running from or running to? Both, neither. I don't know anymore. She threw the stone into the water, watched the ripples spread. I wasn't entirely truthful last night. His stomach clenched. Oh? When I said I recognized you as just another cowboy, that wasn't all I saw. What else? Someone as lost as I am. Someone trying to make sense of a life that didn't turn out as planned. She pulled her knees to her chest. I'm 26, Jack. In a town this size, that makes me practically a spinster. I should be married with children by now. Instead, I'm covered in flour, fighting to keep a bakery afloat, raising a brother who's almost grown. You're magnificent, she laughed, but it was sad. I'm tired. Then let me help. You don't even know me. Then let me know you. Give me time to know you. How much time? However much you'll give me. She stood, brushing off her skirt. Walk with me. They followed the creek upstream, where the path narrowed and the trees grew thick. She told him about the town, its personalities and politics. He told her about the places he'd seen, adventures that sounded romantic until you lived them. Were you ever in love? She asked suddenly. Before? I thought I was once, a rancher's daughter in Wyoming, but when she asked me to stay to take a job with her father, I couldn't do it, left in the middle of the night like a coward. Why? Because staying would have meant stopping, and I didn't know how to stop. The moving was all that kept me from thinking too much, from remembering too much. And now? Now I'm tired of running from ghosts. I'd rather face them. They'd reached a bend where the creek widened into another pool. Eliza sat on a fallen log and Jack joined her. If you stay, she said carefully, what would you do? For work? Whatever needs doing. I'm good with horses, cattle. I can build, repair. I can learn what I don't know. The town's growing. There's always work for someone willing to do it. Is the town growing, or are you trying to convince yourself? She smiled slightly. Both. Eliza, can I ask you something? You've been asking me things all morning. Something specific. That cowboy who left, did you love him? She was quiet for a moment. I love the idea of him, of being chosen, wanted, of starting a life with someone. But him specifically, I'm not sure I ever really knew him. He showed me what he thought I wanted to see. I'm not doing that. Aren't you? The reformed drifter, ready to settle down? No, because I'm not reformed, and I don't know if I'm ready. I'm just here, being honest about not having answers. That's something, I suppose. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the water move. Finally, Eliza stood. I should get back. Sunday dinner won't cook itself. Can I see you again? You know where the bakery is. That's not an answer. She turned to face him. Jack, I like you. More than I should for someone I just met. But liking isn't enough. Trust takes time. I have time. We'll see. She started back down the path, and he followed. At the edge of town, she stopped. Don't buy all my bread again. What if I need it? Then buy what you need, only what you need. What if what I need isn't bread? She looked at him for a long moment. Then I guess you'll have to be more specific about what you're shopping for. She left him at the corner, heading toward the small house she shared with Thomas. Jack watched until she disappeared inside, then walked back to the boarding house. Mrs. Patterson was on the porch, her knitting needles clicking like telegraph keys. That's Eliza Monroe you were walking with. Yes, ma'am. Good girl, hard worker, deserves better than she's gotten. Yes, ma'am. You planning on staying in town, Mr. Carter? I'm considering it. Consider hard. This town's seen enough cowboys considering things with that girl. That evening, Jack found Thomas Monroe at the Lucky Dollar. The younger man was playing poker with a group of locals, winning from the look of his chip stack. Mind if I sit in? Jack asked. Thomas gestured to an empty chair. Your money's as good as anyone's. They played in relative silence for an hour, Jack deliberately losing small amounts to keep the peace. Finally, Thomas threw down his cards. Just say whatever it is you came to say. I want to court your sister. I figured, and I'm asking your permission. Thomas laughed. You don't need my permission. Eliza does what she wants. But you're her family. Your opinion matters to her. My opinion is that you're going to hurt her. Maybe not on purpose, but cowboys like you always do. You're not like the others. Sure, you're different, special. You're the one who'll actually stay. Thomas gathered his chips. I've heard it before, Carter. So has she. So what do you suggest I do? Prove me wrong. Don't tell me you're different. Show me. Show her. Get a job. Build a life here. Become part of this town. Then maybe I'll believe you're not just passing through. Jack considered this. Fair enough. Know anyone hiring? Sam Henderson needs help at the general store. His back's been acting up. It's not glamorous work. I'm not looking for glamorous. Thomas studied him. You're serious. Dead serious. The job pays barely anything. You'll be hauling freight, stocking shelves, dealing with demanding customers. When do I start? Talk to Sam tomorrow. Thomas stood to leave, then paused. Carter? She wakes up at 4 every morning to start the ovens.
Works until 6 at night, sometimes later, 6 days a week. That bakery is her life. If you're not prepared to respect that, to support that, then ride on now. I'm not riding anywhere. We'll see. Monday morning, Jack was at Henderson's when the store opened.
Sam Henderson, a man built like a barrel with arms to match, looked him up and down. Thomas Monroe says you're looking for work. I am. You ever work retail before? No, sir. It's different from cowboying. Customers can be harder to handle than cattle. I'll learn. Pays $1.50 a day, 6 days a week. Hours are 7 to 6, half day on Saturday. That's fine. When can you start? Now. Sam's eyebrows rose. Now? Unless you need me to start earlier. For the first time, Sam smiled. Son, I think we'll get along fine. The work was hard in a different way than Jack was used to. Instead of the open sky, he had the cramped stockroom. Instead of a horse beneath him, he had his own 2 feet on hard wooden floors for 11 hours straight. But when he carried 50-pound flour sacks from the wagon to the storeroom, he thought about the bread Eliza would make with them. When he dealt with difficult customers, he reminded himself he was learning to be part of this community. He stopped by the bakery that first evening, just before closing. Eliza looked up from wiping down the counter, surprised. Jack, how was your first day? Educational. Did you know Mrs. Henshaw has opinions about everything from pickle brands to the proper way to stack canned goods? Everyone knows that. Well, now I do too. He pulled out a small paper bag. I brought you something. She opened it carefully. Inside were 2 peppermint sticks. My favorite. How did you know? Sam mentioned it. Said you buy them, but only for special occasions. And what's the occasion? Monday. That's not special. It is now. She shook her head, but she was smiling. You can't court me with candy, Jack Carter. I'm not courting you. I'm just bringing a friend some peppermint sticks because it's Monday. We're friends now? I hope so. Friends seems like a good place to start. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm Jack hadn't expected to find comforting. He'd rise before dawn, dress in his work clothes, and stop by the bakery just as Eliza was pulling the first loaves from the oven. She'd hand him a warm roll and a cup of coffee, and they'd share 10 minutes of quiet conversation before the town woke up. Then he'd head to Henderson's, where Sam had quickly learned to rely on him for the heavy lifting and difficult deliveries. You're different than I expected, Eliza told him one morning in early August, 3 weeks after he'd started working. The pre-dawn air was cool, and she'd wrapped a shawl around her shoulders as they stood in the doorway of the bakery. Different how? Quieter. Most cowboys who stay in town can't stop talking about their adventures, trying to impress everyone with tales of danger and excitement. Maybe I'm trying to forget those tales, not relive them. She studied him over the rim of her coffee cup. Or maybe you're just better at showing than telling. That afternoon, Jack was unloading a shipment when Thomas Monroe walked into the store. The younger man had been watching him for weeks, suspicious and protective in equal measure. Carter, he nodded. Thomas. Sam says you're working out well. Sam's a good boss. Thomas picked up a hammer from the display, testing its weight. Eliza seems happier lately. Does she? Don't play dumb. You know she does. You see her every morning. Jack set down the crate he was carrying. Is there something you want to say? Yeah, there is. Thomas set the hammer down carefully. I was wrong about you. Or at least, I might have been wrong. You're still here, doing honest work, not making a fuss about it. That counts for something. But she's my sister, and if you're playing some long game, I'm not playing anything. I'm just living, working, being part of this town, and courting Eliza. Being her friend. Thomas snorted. Friend, right. Friends don't look at each other the way you two do. How do we look at each other? Like you're both scared and hopeful at the same time. Like you're waiting for permission to want what you want. Jack didn't have an answer for that. Thomas was right, of course. Every morning in the bakery, every evening walk they'd started taking along the creek. Every Sunday afternoon they spent talking under the cottonwoods. It all felt like a held breath, waiting for something to begin. She's scared, Thomas said quietly. More scared than she lets on. After what happened with Daniel,
The one who left. Daniel Morrison. He was good with words, too, good at making promises. Had the whole town convinced he was staying, then one morning, gone. No explanation beyond that note. I'm not him. No, you're not. You're actually working, for one thing. Daniel never did get a real job, just talked about all the things he was going to do. Thomas headed for the door, then turned back. There's a dance Saturday night, harvest celebration. Eliza loves to dance, though she'll never admit it. Thanks for telling me. Don't thank me, just don't step on her feet. That evening, Jack found Eliza closing up the bakery. He'd taken to walking her home most nights, a habit that had developed without either of them acknowledging it. Thomas came by the store today, he said as they walked. Oh, what did my brother want? To threaten me, inspect me, and invite me to the harvest dance, in that order. She laughed. That sounds like Tommy. Are you going? To the dance? That depends. On what? On whether you'll save me a dance. She was quiet for a moment, their footsteps the only sound on the empty street. Jack, people will talk if we dance together. People are already talking. It'll be different, more official. Is that what you're worried about? What people think? No. She stopped walking, turning to face him. I'm worried about what I think, what I feel. What do you feel? Confused, happy, terrified. She started walking again, faster now. I told myself I wouldn't do this again, wouldn't let some cowboy turn my head with sweet words and promises. I haven't made any promises. No, you haven't. And somehow, that makes it worse. Because you're just here, every day, being steady and real and making me forget why I built these walls. They'd reached her house. The windows glowed with lamplight, and Jack could see Thomas moving around inside. Eliza, he caught her hand gently. Dance with me on Saturday, not because of what people will think or won't think. Dance with me because you love to dance, and because maybe, just maybe, you'd like to dance with me. She looked down at their joined hands. 1 dance. 3, 2, deal. Saturday came with the kind of perfect weather that made Colorado summers worth enduring the winters. The whole town turned out for the harvest dance, held in the big barn at the Mosley Ranch just outside town. Lanterns hung from every beam, and tables groaned under the weight of food everyone had contributed. The local musicians had set up in the corner, fiddle and guitar, and accordion ready to play until midnight at least. Jack had bought a new shirt for the occasion and even gotten another haircut. He stood near the door, watching families arrive, children racing around despite their parents scolding, young couples trying not to seem too eager for the dancing to begin. When Eliza walked in with Thomas, Jack's heart stopped. She wore a dress he'd never seen before, deep green with small white flowers embroidered along the hem. Her hair was pinned up in an elaborate style that must have taken an hour to achieve, with small white flowers tucked into the auburn waves. She was, quite simply, the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Their eyes met across the barn, and she smiled, shy but genuine. He started toward her, but Mrs. Henshaw intercepted him. Mr. Carter, how nice to see you here. I wasn't sure if you'd attend, being new to town and all. Wouldn't miss it, ma'am. And will you be dancing? I imagine a cowboy like you knows all the latest steps from the bigger cities. I know a few steps, but nothing fancy. Oh, I'm sure you're being modest. Perhaps you'll dance with my niece, Charlotte. She's visiting from Denver and doesn't know anyone here. Before Jack could respond, a young woman appeared at Mrs. Henshaw's elbow, blonde, pretty, and looking thoroughly bored with the whole affair. Charlotte, dear, this is Mr. Carter. He works at Henderson's store. Charlotte's eyes swept over him with the kind of assessment he recognized from his years in saloons and dance halls. A pleasure, Mr. Carter. My aunt tells me you're new to town. Relatively new, yes. How exciting! You must have such stories from your travels. The music started then, a lively reel that had couples flooding onto the dance floor. Charlotte placed her hand on his arm expectantly, and Jack found himself trapped. To refuse would be inexcusably rude, would mark him as ungentlemanly in this small town where reputation mattered. Would you care to dance, Miss Charlotte? I'd be delighted. As he led her onto the floor, Jack caught sight of Eliza being led out by Walter Hutchins, the bank manager's son. She didn't look at him, but he saw the tension in her shoulders, the forced brightness of her smile. Charlotte was an accomplished dancer, following his lead easily as they moved through the steps. She chattered about Denver, about fashion, about how quaint she found Silver Creek. Jack responded politely, but kept finding his gaze drawn to Eliza, who was now dancing with yet another partner, Jim Bradley from the mining company. "You're distracted," Charlotte observed during a turn. "My apologies." "No need, I can guess why." She glanced toward Eliza. "The baker. My aunt mentioned there was some gossip about you two." "Your aunt sees gossip where none exists." "Does she? Because you've looked at her approximately 12 times since we started dancing." Jack had the grace to flush. "I apologize again." "Don't. It's actually rather romantic. The mysterious cowboy pining for the local baker. Very storybook." "It's not like that, isn't it?" The song ended, and Charlotte stepped back, curtsying politely. "Thank you for the dance, Mr. Carter. Now, I believe you have somewhere else to be." She walked away before he could respond, leaving him standing alone on the edge of the dance floor. The musicians struck up a waltz, slower and more intimate than the previous song. Jack made his way through the crowd to where Eliza stood by the refreshment table, having just finished her second dance. "Miss Monroe," he said formally, aware of the eyes upon them. "Would you honor me with this dance?" She hesitated for just a moment, then placed her hand in his. "Of course, Mr. Carter." The moment they stepped onto the floor, the moment his hand found her waist and hers rested on his shoulder, everything else faded away. They fit together perfectly, moved together as if they'd been dancing for years instead of seconds. "You dance well," she said softly. "My mother taught me. She said a gentleman should know how to dance properly." Charlotte seemed to enjoy it. "Were you watching?" "The whole barn was watching. She's very pretty." "I didn't notice." Eliza laughed quietly. "Liar." "I noticed she talked too much and wasn't you." They turned and he pulled her slightly closer. Probably inappropriate, but he didn't care. She didn't pull away. "People are staring," she whispered. "Let them." "Jack, do you remember what you asked me, whether I was running from or running to?" "Yes." "I know the answer now. I was running to. To this town, this dance, this moment. To you." Her breath caught. "You can't just say things like that." "Why not if they're true?" The song was ending too soon. As the last notes faded, Jack made a decision. Instead of stepping back, instead of bowing politely and walking away, he kept her hand in his. "Again?" he asked. She should have said no. Convention dictated that dancing 2 songs in a row with the same partner was a declaration of serious interest. Everyone would talk. Everyone would assume. "Again," she agreed. They danced 3 more songs together until the musicians took a break. By then, the entire barn was buzzing with speculation. Jack led Eliza outside, where the air was cooler and the stars were just beginning to appear. "You've done it now," she said, but she was smiling. "By tomorrow, the whole town will have us engaged." "Would that be so terrible?" She looked up at him sharply. "Jack, I'm not proposing. I'm just saying the idea of being connected to you, even in gossip, doesn't bother me." They walked away from the barn toward a grove of aspens that shimmered silver in the moonlight. Other couples had the same idea, seeking privacy in the shadows, but Jack found them a spot apart from the others. "I need to tell you something," Eliza said suddenly. "About Daniel. You don't owe me explanations about the past." "No, but I need you to understand. When he left, it wasn't just my heart that broke. It was my faith in my own judgment. I thought I knew him, thought I could tell the difference between truth and pretty lies. When I was wrong, I stopped trusting myself. And now? Now I'm terrified because everything in me says you're different, says you're real, says you're staying. But I said the same thing about him." Jack turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "I can't promise I'll never hurt you. I can't promise I'll be perfect, or that I'll always know the right thing to say or do, but I can promise that I'm not going anywhere, not without you." "What does that mean?" "It means if I ever leave Silver Creek,
It'll be with you beside me, because we've decided together to go somewhere else. It means my wandering days are done, not because I've found a place to stop, but because I've found a person to stop with. She was crying now, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. I want to believe you. Then believe this. He pulled out a small object from his pocket, something wrapped in cloth. I bought this 3 weeks ago. Not because I was ready to give it to you, but because I saw it and thought of you and couldn't imagine anyone else wearing it. She unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a small silver locket, delicate and simple, with a tiny pearl set in the center. Jack, I can't. You can. It doesn't mean anything you don't want it to mean. It's just a gift. From a friend. Who maybe wants to be more than a friend but is willing to wait until you're ready. She held the locket up to the moonlight, watching it shimmer. It's beautiful. May I? She nodded, turning so he could fasten it around her neck. His fingers brushed the nape of her neck, and she shivered. Cold? No. They stood there, her back to him, both afraid to move and break whatever spell had been woven. Finally, she turned. Ask me again. Ask you what? To dance. Tomorrow at the social, next week at the Murphys' wedding. Every dance for the foreseeable future. Eliza Monroe, will you dance with me at every opportunity, scandalize the town with our obvious attachment, and generally make Mrs. Henshaw's gossip legitimate? Yes. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. It was their first kiss, but it felt like coming home after a long journey. When they pulled apart, both were breathless. We should go back, she said, before Thomas comes looking. In a minute. Jack, just one more minute. I've waited 32 years for this. Let me savor it. She laughed and kissed him again, quick and light. There. Now we really need to go back. They returned to find the dancing had resumed. Thomas took one look at them, at their joined hands, at the locket around Eliza's neck, at the happiness radiating from his sister's face, and nodded. About time, was all he said. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. They danced every dance together, no longer caring who watched or what they said. Jack met more townspeople that night than he had in all his weeks of working at Henderson's, all of them suddenly eager to know the man who had captured Eliza Monroe's carefully guarded heart. As the evening wound down, as families gathered sleepy children and couples made their farewells, Jack walked Eliza and Thomas home. At their door, Thomas went inside with obvious intent to give them privacy. Thank you, Eliza said, for the dancing, the locket, for everything. Thank you for saying yes to all of it. Jack? She touched the locket at her throat. What you said about not leaving without me. I meant it. I know. That's what scares me, because I think I wouldn't want you to go without me, and that's a dangerous thing to feel after only 6 weeks. Then we'll take it slow as you need. She laughed. We just danced 5 dances in a row and scandalized the entire town. I don't think we know how to take things slow. We could learn. We could. She rose on her tiptoes and kissed his cheek. Good night, Jack. Good night, Eliza. He waited until she was safely inside before heading back to his boarding house. Mrs. Patterson was, predictably, waiting on the porch despite the late hour. Heard you caused quite a stir at the dance. News travels fast. Faster than wildfire in a town this size. You serious about that, girl? Completely. Good. She deserves serious. She deserves permanent. Yes, ma'am, she does. The next morning, Jack arrived at the bakery to find Eliza already had a customer, Mrs. Henshaw, of course, eager for details about the previous evening. The older woman's eyes narrowed when she saw Jack. Mr. Carter, early for your morning bread? As always, Mrs. Henshaw. I was just telling dear Eliza how lovely she looked last night, and how much attention she received from a certain newcomer to town. The harvest dance is always lovely, Eliza said diplomatically, handing Mrs. Henshaw her usual order. Thank you for coming by. It was a clear dismissal, but Mrs. Henshaw lingered. That's a beautiful locket, dear. New? A gift. How generous. From anyone special. Have a good day, Mrs. Henshaw, Jack said firmly, holding the door open for her. The older woman huffed but left, no doubt rushing to spread this latest development to her network of gossips. You know that was rude, Eliza said, but she was smiling. Sometimes rude is necessary. Besides, she got what she came for, confirmation of the gossip. The whole town will know about the locket by noon. Good. Saves me the trouble of taking out an advertisement in the newspaper. She handed him his usual coffee and roll. You're in a good mood this morning. I danced with the prettiest girl in Colorado last night, multiple times. My good mood might last for weeks. Just weeks? Months if she lets me kiss her again. Jack! She glanced toward the door, checking for observers. What? We're officially scandalous now. Might as well embrace it. Over the following weeks, they settled into a new rhythm. Jack still came by every morning, but now he stayed longer, helping her prepare for the day when he could. He learned that she hummed when she worked, always the same Irish tune her mother had taught her. He learned that she was fiercely competitive about her bread, constantly experimenting with new recipes to outdo the bakery in the next town over. He learned that she wrote letters to her cousins in Ireland every month, though she'd never met them. In turn, she learned that he had nightmares about the war, waking in cold sweats with memories of blood and cannon fire. She learned that he could play the harmonica, a skill taught by an old cowhand on his first drive. She learned that he sent money every month to a widow in Texas, the wife of his best friend who died saving his life in a stampede. September arrived with golden aspens and cool mornings. Jack had been in Silver Creek for 2 months, longer than he'd stayed anywhere since the war. Sam Henderson had raised his wages and given him more responsibility at the store. He'd even started talking about making Jack a partner eventually, when Sam was ready to step back. It was a Sunday afternoon, and Jack and Eliza were at their usual spot by the creek. The water was lower now, preparing for the coming winter. Eliza was reading from a book of poetry, while Jack whittled a piece of wood into what would eventually be a bird. Jack, she said suddenly, setting down her book. What are we doing? I'm whittling. You're reading. No, I mean, what are we doing? You and me. This. She gestured between them. He set down his knife carefully. I thought we were courting. Is that what this is? Because courting implies an end goal, doesn't it? Courting leads somewhere. Where do you want it to lead? She was quiet for a long moment, watching the water. My parents were married for 28 years. They came to America with nothing but hope in each other. They built a life, a business, a family. Even when things were hard, and they were hard a lot, they had each other. That's what I want, that kind of partnership, that kind of permanence. Eliza, but I'm scared, because wanting something that much means it can destroy you if it goes wrong. And I've already had one man promise me forever and then vanish like smoke. Jack moved closer to her on the log, taking her hand. What do you need from me? What would make you feel safe? Time, I suppose. Proof that this is real, that you're really staying. How much time? I don't know. How do you measure something like that? 3 months? 6? A year? Then we wait, however long you need. You say that now, I'll say it in 3 months, 6 months, a year. Eliza, I'm not going anywhere. She leaned against his shoulder. Tell me about the future. What you see for us. It was the first time she'd said us in that way, acknowledging a shared future as a real possibility. Jack's heart swelled. I see a house on the edge of town, nothing fancy but ours. A couple of horses in the barn, maybe some chickens. I see Sunday dinners with Thomas and whatever family he eventually has. I see teaching our children to ride, teaching them your mother's Irish songs. Children, she repeated softly. Is that too much? Too presumptuous? No, it's nice. How many children in this vision of yours? However many you want. Though I'd like at least 2. I grew up with brothers, and even though I lost them, I'm grateful for the time we had together. I always wanted a big family. The bakery would be perfect for children. They could help once they're old enough, learn the trade if they want. Or not, if they don't want. Maybe one will want to be a teacher like my mother, or a doctor, or even a cowboy, though I'd try to talk them out of that last one. She laughed. A reformed cowboy discouraging the cowboy life? The best cautionary tales come from experience. They sat in comfortable silence, both imagining this potential future. Finally, Eliza stood, brushing off her skirt. I should get back. I need to prepare the dough for tomorrow. Want help? You don't know how to make bread. I could learn. She studied him for a moment. All right, but you have to do exactly as I say. Bread is temperamental. They walked back to the bakery, and Eliza let them in through the back door. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, turning everything golden. She tied an apron around her waist and tossed another to Jack. First, the flour. She showed him how to measure, how to create the well in the center, how to add the water and yeast at just the right temperature. When he added too much water to his batch, she laughed and helped him add more flour to compensate. When it came time to knead, she stood behind him, her hands over his, showing him the proper rhythm and pressure. It's like a dance, she said. Push, fold, turn. Push, fold, turn. Everything's a dance with you. Maybe. Or maybe dancing is just life set to music. They worked side by side as the sun set, filling the bakery with the warm smell of rising dough. Jack's batch was misshapen and probably wouldn't rise properly, but Eliza pronounced it not terrible for a first attempt. I'll make a baker of you yet, she said, flour in her hair and on her nose. Is that what you want? A baker husband? The word hung between them. Husband. It was the first time either had said it out loud, named what this was building toward. I want, she said carefully, a partner. Someone who understands that the bakery isn't just my job, it's my heritage. My parents built it. My mother's recipes fill it. When I need dough, I feel connected to her, to Ireland, to all the women who came before me who fed their families with their own hands. I understand that. Do you? Because it means early mornings for the rest of our lives. It means our hands will always smell like yeast and flour. It means sometimes missing social events because the bread can't wait. Eliza. He turned her to face him, cupping her flour-dusted face in his hands. I love your early mornings because they mean I get to see you before the rest of the world wakes up. I love that your hands smell like bread because it means you're creating something essential and good. And I'd miss every social event for the rest of my life if it meant being with you while you work your magic with flour and water and yeast. She kissed him then, really kissed him, not the careful, chaste kisses they'd shared before. This was heat and promise and a hunger that had nothing to do with bread. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she stepped back. I should get home. Thomas will wonder. Right, yes. They locked up the bakery and walked to her house in charged silence. At the door, she turned to him. Jack, what you said about the bakery, about understanding, you meant it. Every word. Then tomorrow, come earlier, 5:30 instead of 6. I'll show you how to make the morning loaves. If you're going to be a baker's husband, you should know what you're getting into. There it was again. Husband. This time from her lips, claimed and owned. 5:30, he agreed. The next morning, he was there at 5:25, finding her just arriving to start the ovens. She smiled when she saw him, shy in the pre-dawn darkness. Ready to learn? Always. She taught him her mother's recipe for soda bread, the first thing she'd learned to make as a child. He was clumsy with the dough but eager to learn, and by the time the sun rose, they had produced several passable loaves together. Not bad, she said, examining his work, though perhaps we won't sell these particular loaves. That bad? Let's just say they have character. Sam Henderson was the first to notice Jack's new routine. You're coming in later these days, the store owner observed one morning as Jack rushed in at 7:15, still brushing flour from his shirt. Sorry, Sam, I've been helping Eliza with the morning baking. Helping? Sam's bushy eyebrows rose. Since when does a cowboy know anything about baking? Since about 2 weeks ago. I'm learning. Sam studied him with the kind of knowing look that came from decades of watching young people court and marry. You planning on making an honest woman of her soon? When she's ready. Son, a word of advice, women like Eliza Monroe don't wait around forever, and there's plenty of men in this town who've been watching her for years, just waiting for their chance. Jack knew Sam was right. He'd noticed the looks from other men, the way Walter Hutchins still tried to engage Eliza in conversation after church, the way Jim Bradley always seemed to need bread right before closing time. But Eliza had made her choice clear, wearing his locket every day, walking with him openly through town, letting him help with the baking despite the raised eyebrows it caused. October arrived with the first frost, delicate crystals on windows that melted at the first touch of sun. Jack had been in Silver Creek for 3 months now, and the town had begun to feel less like a stopping point and more like home. He knew the regulars at Henderson's by name, knew their usual orders, their family dramas, their hopes and complaints. Mrs. Henshaw had even grudgingly admitted he was quite helpful for a former drifter. It was a Thursday morning, and Jack was helping Eliza prepare a special order for the Mosley Ranch, 5 dozen rolls for their harvest celebration. They worked in comfortable rhythm, no longer needing to speak to coordinate their movements. Jack had just pulled a batch from the oven when the bell above the door chimed. A man walked in, tall and well-dressed, with the kind of bearing that spoke of money and education. He removed his hat, revealing sandy hair and sharp blue eyes that went straight to Eliza. It just took longer than expected to settle my affairs in San Francisco. Your affairs, Eliza repeated flatly. You mean the wife you forgot to mention? Daniel had the grace to flush. That's been resolved. The marriage was annulled. A mistake. Nothing more. A mistake. She untied her apron with deliberate movements. Like proposing to me was a mistake? No, that was real. You were real. That's why I'm back. Jack stepped forward then, unable to stay silent. The lady seems uninterested in your presence. Daniel's eyes narrowed, really looking at Jack for the first time. And you are? Jack Carter. The new help? I was asking the lady. He's not help, Eliza interrupted. He's... She glanced at Jack, and he saw the moment she made her decision. He's my fiancé. The word hit the room like thunder. Daniel's face went pale, then red. Jack's heart stopped, then raced. Even the bread seemed to pause in its rising. You're what? Daniel stepped closer, and Jack moved protectively toward Eliza. You're engaged? To him? It's been 6 months, Liza. 6 months, and you're ready to marry some drifter? He's not a drifter. He lives here, works here. He's part of this town in a way you never were. I was part of this town. I was part of your life. Until you left. Without explanation, without goodbye, with nothing but a note saying you couldn't be tied down. I made a mistake and... No. Eliza's voice was strong now, certain. You made a choice. And so have I. She reached for Jack's hand, lacing their fingers together. I choose the man who shows up every morning, who learns to bake because it matters to me, who works an honest job and treats me with respect. I choose the man who stays. Daniel's handsome face twisted into something ugly. You think he'll stay? Men like him never stay. I've seen a dozen Jack Carters in my travels. Cowboys who think they want to settle down until the wind changes and they remember the freedom of the trail. You're describing yourself, Jack said quietly. Not me. Am I? How long have you been here? 3 months? 4? Come back in a year and see if he's still playing house with you, Liza. Get out! Eliza's voice was ice. Get out of my bakery and don't come back. Daniel stood there for a moment, looking between them. You'll regret this. When he leaves, and he will leave, you'll remember that I came back for you. The only thing I regret is the months I wasted believing you. Daniel slammed out, the bell jangling discordantly. In the silence that followed, Jack could hear both their hearts racing. Beyoncé? He said softly. Eliza's face flushed. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. It just came out. You don't have to... He kissed her, cutting off her words. When they pulled apart, he was smiling. Eliza Monroe, are you proposing to me? What? No, I was just... Because if you are, my answer is yes. She stared at him. Jack, be serious. I am being serious, completely, absolutely serious. I love you. I've loved you since you had flour on your cheek that first day. I was just waiting for you to be ready. This is backward and rushed and probably a terrible idea. Probably, he agreed. But Daniel was right about one thing. Men like him never stay. But men like me? We stay when we find something worth staying for. And you, Eliza Monroe, are worth everything. She was crying now, tears rolling down her cheeks as she laughed. This isn't how proposals are supposed to happen. How are they supposed to happen? I don't know. Moonlight, flowers? You on one knee? Jack dropped to one knee right there in the bakery, still holding her hand. Eliza Monroe, you've already proposed to me in front of your former fiancé, which was probably the most romantic thing I've ever witnessed. Will you make it official? Will you marry me? You're serious. Dead serious. Though I should warn you, I don't have a ring. I spent my savings on that locket and next month's rent. She laughed through her tears. I don't need a ring. Is that a yes? Ask me properly. I thought I was. No, ask me the real question, the one that matters. He understood then. Eliza Monroe, will you let me wake up beside you for the rest of our lives? Will you teach me your mother's recipes and let me help with the morning bread? Will you build a life with me here in Silver Creek? Have children who will grow up covered in flour and loved beyond measure? Will you dance with me at every opportunity until we're too old to stand? Will you be my home? Yes, she whispered. Yes to all of it. He stood and kissed her again, both of them tasting of tears and joy. When they broke apart, she was smiling in a way he'd never seen before, completely unguarded, radiantly happy. We should tell Thomas, she said. He might shoot me. No, he likes you now. He only threatens to shoot you out of habit. They closed the bakery, something Eliza had never done in the middle of the day, and walked hand in hand to the general store where Thomas often played checkers with Sam during his lunch break. Sure enough, they found him there, along with half a dozen other townspeople who'd gathered for the daily gossip session. Eliza? Thomas stood, concerned. Why is the bakery closed? Is everything all right? Everything's perfect, she said, then took a breath. Jack and I are getting married. The store erupted. Sam whooped and slapped Jack on the back hard enough to bruise. Mrs. Patterson declared she'd known it from the start. Even Mrs. Henshaw seemed pleased, probably already mentally composing the gossip she'd spread. Thomas was quiet, studying his sister's face. Then he extended his hand to Jack. Welcome to the family. Officially. That's it? Eliza asked. No threats? No warnings? Oh, the threats still stand, but I figure any man brave enough to marry into this family knows what he's getting into. He hugged his sister. Ma would be happy. She would, Eliza agreed, touching the locket at her throat. The news spread through Silver Creek like wildfire. By evening, everyone knew that Eliza Monroe had accepted Jack Carter, that they'd gotten engaged in the bakery of all places, and that Daniel Morrison had been sent packing. Opinions varied on the speed of the engagement. 3 months was practically a lifetime by frontier standards, but scandalously quick by others. But most agreed they seemed well suited. That evening, Jack and Eliza sat with Thomas in the small Monroe parlor, planning their future. The wedding would be simple, they decided. Next month, before the heavy snows came. The church ceremony followed by a reception in the same barn where they'd first danced together. Where will you live? Thomas asked. Jack and Eliza exchanged glances. They hadn't discussed the practicalities yet. There's room here, Thomas offered. At least at first. Actually, Jack said slowly, Sam mentioned the Garrett place is for sale. The cabin out by Miller's Bend? It's small, but it's only a 10-minute walk from town. From the bakery. Eliza's eyes lit up. The one with the apple trees? 5 of them, and enough land for a garden, maybe some chickens. How much? Thomas asked practically. $300. I have about 60 saved, if I could get a loan for the rest. I have money, Eliza said quietly. From Mother and Da. They left almost $400. I've never touched it, kept thinking I'd need it for an emergency. This isn't an emergency, Jack protested. No, she agreed. It's an investment. In our future. Thomas cleared his throat. I have some saved too. Consider it a wedding gift. Or a bribe to get you out of the house so I can finally court Sally Henderson without my sister watching. Sally Henderson? Eliza exclaimed. Sam's daughter? Since when? Since about 2 months ago, but that's not the point. The point is, you two should have your own place. They talked late into the night, planning and dreaming. Jack would continue working at Henderson's, maybe eventually becoming a partner as Sam had suggested. Eliza would keep the bakery, with Jack helping in the mornings before his shift. They'd fix up the Garrett cabin,
make it a proper home. The next morning, Daniel Morrison was waiting outside the bakery when Eliza arrived. Jack tensed, ready for a fight, but Daniel held up his hands peacefully. "I came to apologize," he said, "and to say goodbye. Properly this time." "There's nothing to say," Eliza replied, but without the ice from yesterday. "There is. I hurt you, and I'm sorry. You deserved better." He looked at Jack. "She deserves better from you too. Better than I gave her." "I know," Jack said simply. Daniel studied him for a moment. "You really mean to stay, don't you? This isn't just some romantic notion that'll fade?" "The only thing that'll fade is your memory in this town." Daniel actually smiled at that. "Good. That's good." He turned back to Eliza. "Be happy. You always did deserve to be happy." He mounted his horse, expensive, Jack noted, like everything about him, and rode away without looking back. This time, Eliza didn't watch him go. She was already unlocking the bakery, moving forward with her day, her life. "You okay?" Jack asked. "More than okay. I feel free, like I've been holding my breath for 6 months and can finally exhale." "I know that feeling." She smiled at him. "I know you do." They worked together preparing the morning bread, and Jack noticed the difference in her movements, lighter, easier, as if Daniel's appearance and departure had lifted a weight she'd been carrying. When the first customers arrived, word had already spread about the confrontation and the confirmed engagement. Everyone wanted details, but Eliza simply smiled and sold them their bread, occasionally touching the locket at her throat. That afternoon, Jack and Thomas went to look at the Garrett place. The cabin was sturdy but needed work. New shingles on the roof, repairs to the porch, a thorough cleaning of the chimney. The apple trees were mature and well-established, promising good harvests. There was space for a stable, a chicken coop, a substantial garden. "It's perfect," Thomas declared. "Needs work, but perfect." "Everything good needs work," Jack replied, already mentally cataloging what needed to be done. They shook hands with Mr. Garrett that very day, agreeing on the price and terms. Jack would take possession immediately, giving him a month to make it livable before the wedding. The next weeks passed in a blur of activity. Jack spent every free moment at the cabin, often accompanied by Thomas and other men from town who showed up to help. It was the frontier way. When someone was building a home, the community pitched in. Sam Henderson donated lumber for the porch repairs. The Moseleys contributed shingles. Mrs. Patterson and her ladies' circle made curtains and quilts. Eliza came out every evening after closing the bakery, bringing dinner, and staying to help until dark. They painted the walls together, fixed the kitchen shelves, planted bulbs that would bloom in spring. It was hard work, but every improvement made it more theirs, more home. "I never imagined this," Eliza said one evening as they sat on the newly repaired porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and pink. "What?" "Any of it. You, this cabin, getting married. 6 months ago, I thought my life was set. The bakery, taking care of Thomas, growing old alone but content. Then you walked in demanding every loaf of bread I had. Best impulsive decision I ever made. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd just bought one loaf like a normal person? Probably would have kept writing, never known what I was missing." She leaned against his shoulder. "I'm glad you're not normal." "So am I." The wedding was set for the second Saturday in November. Eliza had her mother's wedding dress altered to fit, a simple but elegant ivory silk that had made the journey from Ireland. Jack bought a proper suit from the tailor in Denver, the first new suit he'd owned in his life. The week before the wedding, Jack was at Henderson's when a group of cowboys came through town, heading south after a cattle drive. Jack recognized the type, trail-worn, flush with pay, looking for supplies and entertainment before moving on. He'd been one of them so many times. "You Jack Carter?" one of them asked, an older man with silver threading through his beard. "I am." "Thought so. Recognized your mare outside. We rode together back in '72. The Chisholm Trail. You saved my hide when my horse went down in that river crossing." Jack studied the man's face, memory clicking into place. "Pete Hawkins." "That's right." Pete grinned, extending his hand. "Heard you'd settled down but didn't believe it. Jack Carter.
The man who swore he'd never stay in one place longer than a season. Things change. They surely do. You really marrying that Baker girl? The pretty one with the Irish look? I really am. Pete shook his head in wonder. Never thought I'd see the day. What happened to the man who said roots were just chains by another name? He grew up, Jack said simply. Found something worth being chained to. The Cowboys made camp outside town, and that evening, several of them stopped by the bakery just before closing. Eliza had heard about their arrival. Everyone had, and Jack could see the worry in her eyes. Here was his past, literally at her doorstep, reminder of the life he'd lived before. Ma'am, Pete tipped his hat to her, wanted to meet the woman who tamed Jack Carter. I didn't tame anyone, Eliza replied. He made his own choice. Must be some woman to make him choose anything over the trail. She is, Jack said firmly, moving to stand beside her. The best woman. The Cowboys bought bread for their journey, paid their respects, and left. But Jack saw the questions in Eliza's eyes that night as he walked her home. You miss it, she said. Not a question. What? The trail, the freedom, the adventure. I saw your face when you were talking to them. Jack stopped walking, turning her to face him. I saw old friends, that's all. Like running into someone from school years later. You're glad to see them, but you don't want to go back to being who you were then. You're sure? Eliza, I spent 15 years on the trail. You know what I learned? Freedom isn't about having no ties. It's about choosing your ties. And I choose you. Every day, I choose you. She kissed him then, in the middle of Main Street, not caring who saw. I choose you too. 3 days before the wedding, the first real snow began to fall. Not a blizzard, just steady, gentle flakes that covered Silver Creek in pristine white. Jack stood in the doorway of what would soon be his and Eliza's home, watching the snow dust the apple trees, and felt a peace he hadn't known since childhood. Thomas found him there. Getting cold feet? No, just thinking. About? About how I almost didn't stop in Silver Creek. I was actually heading to Wyoming, maybe Montana. This was just supposed to be a place to water my horse. Glad you stopped? Every day. Thomas was quiet for a moment. She loves you, you know, really loves you. Not the idea of you or the romance of it. You, specifically. I know. Good. Because if you didn't know that, I really would have to shoot you. Jack laughed. Your sister's lucky to have you. We're lucky to have each other, and now we're lucky to have you too. Thomas cleared his throat, uncomfortable with sentiment. Anyway, I came to tell you the furniture arrived from Denver. We can move it in tomorrow. They'd ordered a bed, a table and chairs, a rocking chair that Eliza had admired in a catalog. Simple pieces, but new, theirs. The beginning of filling the cabin with a life together. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and cold, the snow sparkling like diamonds in the early light. Jack stood at the front of the church in his new suit, Thomas beside him as best man, watching the door. The church was packed. It seemed the entire town had come to witness the marriage of Eliza Monroe and Jack Carter. When the doors opened and Eliza appeared on Sam Henderson's arm, since her father wasn't there to give her away, Jack forgot how to breathe. She was radiant in her mother's dress, the locket he'd given her at her throat, carrying a bouquet of dried wildflowers she'd collected during their summer walks. Her eyes found his immediately, and the smile she gave him was worth every mile he'd traveled, every night he'd spent alone, every moment of doubt and searching that had led him here. The ceremony was simple, traditional. When Reverend Mills asked if anyone objected, there was a moment of held breath, everyone remembering Daniel Morrison, but only silence greeted the question. When Jack said his vows, promising to love, honor, and cherish, his voice was steady and sure. When Eliza said hers, her eyes never left his face. I now pronounce you husband and wife, Reverend Mills declared. You may kiss your bride. Jack didn't need to be told twice. He kissed Eliza as the church erupted in cheers, as rice rained down on them, despite the Reverend's protests about waste, as their new life officially began. The reception in the Mosley barn was a joyous affair. The tables groaned under the weight of food everyone had contributed. The musicians played with extra enthusiasm. Even Mrs. Henshaw was seen dancing with her husband, a rare sight indeed. During a break in the dancing, Pete Hawkins approached the newlyweds. He was leaving in the morning, heading south with his crew. "You done good, Jack," he said. "This life suits you." "It does." Pete looked at Eliza. "Ma'am, you got yourself a good man. Seen him face down a grizzly once to protect the chuck wagon. Loyal as they come, even if he did take a while to figure out where his loyalty belonged." "I know exactly who I married," Eliza replied, her hand in Jack's. "Good." Pete tipped his hat. "Be happy, both of you. And Jack, if you ever want to ride again, there's always a place for you with my outfit." "Thanks, Pete. But my riding days are done." Pete laughed. "Never thought I'd hear you say that. But looking at your missus here, I understand why." As Pete walked away, Eliza squeezed Jack's hand. "No regrets?" "Only one." Her face fell. "What?" "That I didn't buy your bread sooner." She laughed and pulled him back onto the dance floor, where they spun and swayed as snow fell gently outside, blessing their union with a blanket of white that made everything new and clean and perfect. Late that night, in their cabin with a fire crackling in the hearth, Eliza traced patterns on Jack's chest as they lay entwined in their new bed. "Tell me something," she said. "Anything. That first day, when you bought all my bread, was it really just impulse? Or did you know, somehow?" Jack considered the question. "I think I knew the moment I smelled that bread that my life was about to change. But when I saw you, when you asked if I was lonely and actually cared about the answer, that's when I knew I'd found what I'd been searching for without knowing I was searching." "I knew too," she admitted. "When you came back the next morning, when you sat on that bench all day just to take me to dinner, I knew you were different. I was just too scared to admit it. And now? Now I'm not scared of anything. Not with you beside me." They made love again as the snow continued to fall, as their first night as husband and wife stretched toward dawn. When they finally slept, it was deeply, peacefully, two souls who had wandered long and far finally come home to each other. In the morning, Jack woke first. He lay there watching Eliza sleep, her hair spread across the pillow like silk, her hand resting on his heart even in slumber. Outside, the world was white and pristine, waiting for their footprints to mark new paths. The apple trees stood like sentinels, dormant now, but holding the promise of spring blossoms and autumn fruit. This was what he'd been riding toward all those years without knowing it. Not a place, but a person. Not freedom from bonds, but the freedom to choose his bonds. Not the endless horizon, but the perfect view from one small window, looking out at a life he'd helped build with his own hands and heart. Eliza stirred beside him, her eyes fluttering open to find him watching her. "You're awake," she murmured, voice thick with sleep. "Been awake for a while. Watching you. That's a strange habit for a husband to develop on his first morning. Get used to it. I plan on watching you wake up every morning for the next 50 years at least." She stretched, then suddenly sat up. "Oh no, the bakery. I didn't prepare the dough last night." Jack pulled her back down. "Thomas is handling it. His wedding gift to us. 3 days of managing the bakery so we can have a proper honeymoon. Thomas doesn't know how to... Sally Henderson is helping him. Apparently she's been wanting to learn the business." Eliza relaxed against him. 3 whole days. What will we do with 3 whole days? "I have some ideas," Jack said, kissing her neck, "starting with not leaving this bed for at least another hour." But their peaceful morning was interrupted by a pounding on the door. Jack grabbed his pants, muttering about inconsiderate visitors, and opened it to find young Billy Patterson, Mrs. Patterson's grandson, out of breath and wide-eyed. "Mr. Jack, you gotta come quick. There's been an accident at the mine. Cave-in. They need every man who can dig." Jack was already reaching for his boots. "How bad?" "Real bad. 8 men trapped, maybe more. My pa sent me to gather everyone." "Eliza, I have to... Go," she said, already up and dressing. "I'll prepare food and medical supplies. They'll need both." Jack kissed her quickly. "I love you." "I love you too. Be careful." He rode hard toward the Sovereign Mine, 3 miles outside town. The scene that greeted him was chaos, women crying, men shouting orders, equipment scattered everywhere. The mine supervisor, Carl Brennan, was trying to organize rescue efforts. Jack, thank God, we need experienced men. The main tunnel partially collapsed around dawn. We've got at least 8 men behind the debris, maybe more. How stable is it? Not very. Each time we try to clear rocks, more fall. Jack surveyed the situation with the eye of someone who'd worked in mines before during his wandering years. You're going at it wrong. You need to shore up as you go, not just dig. Get me timbers, as many as you can find. For the next 6 hours, Jack worked alongside the other men, carefully removing debris while installing supports. It was dangerous, back-breaking work. Every few minutes they'd hear more rocks settling, and everyone would freeze, waiting to see if another collapse was coming. Around noon, Eliza arrived with a wagon full of food and medical supplies, accompanied by Doc Morrison and several other women. She found Jack immediately, covered in rock dust and sweat. Any progress? We broke through to a pocket, found 3 men alive, 5 still missing. She handed him water and a sandwich. Eat. You're no good to anyone if you collapse. Can't stop now, schlit. 2 minutes to eat won't make a difference. Jack, you're exhausted. He realized she was right. His hands were shaking from the effort, and he'd been going on pure adrenaline for hours. He wolfed down the sandwich and drained the water bottle. Better? Better. Eliza, this could take all night. You should go home. I'm staying. Those men have families waiting. Someone needs to take care of them too. She was right, of course. The wives and children of the trapped miners had gathered at the entrance, keeping vigil. Eliza and the other women moved among them, offering food, comfort, and hope. It was near sunset when they finally broke through to the main pocket where the remaining men were trapped. The first thing they heard was singing. The miners had been singing hymns to keep their spirits up and help rescuers locate them. We're coming, Jack shouted through the opening. Stay back from the entrance. One by one, they pulled the men through. 5 of them, all alive though injured. The 8th man, they learned, had been killed instantly in the initial collapse. His body was recovered last, carried out with the reverence due a man who died working to feed his family. Jack emerged from the mine as the last of the daylight faded, exhausted beyond measure. Eliza was there immediately, supporting him as his legs nearly gave out. You're a hero, she said. Just did what needed doing. That's what heroes do. Carl Brennan approached them. Jack, I can't thank you enough. Your knowledge saved lives today. If you ever want a job at the mine, thanks, Carl, but no. I've got a job, and a wife who'd kill me if I took up mining. Brennan laughed. Smart man. They rode home in the wagon Eliza had brought, Jack barely conscious enough to stay upright. She'd filled the back with blankets, and he collapsed into them gratefully. Some honeymoon, he mumbled. We have the rest of our lives for honeymoons. Today the town needed you. I'm proud of you. Just wanted to spend the day in bed with my wife. Tomorrow, she promised. Tomorrow we won't leave the cabin for anything less than a catastrophe. But tomorrow brought its own challenges. Jack woke to find his left shoulder screaming in pain. He'd wrenched it during the rescue without realizing. Doc Morrison was summoned and diagnosed a severe strain. You need to rest it for at least a week, the doctor ordered. No lifting, no working. I have a job. Sam Henderson already knows. Whole town knows what you did yesterday. No one expects you back at work immediately. For 3 days, Jack was forced to rest while Eliza tended both him and the bakery, Thomas having returned to his own work. She'd leave before dawn, return at lunch to check on him, then go back until evening. It wasn't the honeymoon either had envisioned. I'm sorry, Jack said on the 3rd evening as she rubbed liniment into his shoulder. This isn't how I wanted to start our marriage. Stop apologizing. You saved 5 men's lives. But you're exhausted. Running the bakery alone, taking care of me. That's what marriage is, isn't it? Taking care of each other. Besides, your shoulder's almost healed. Doc Morrison says you can return to light work next week. I hate being useless. You're not useless. You've been helping me work out the new bread recipe, and keeping me warm at night despite your injury has been quite creative. He pulled her onto his lap with his good arm. Have I told you today that I love you? Only about 12 times. Not nearly enough then. Their kiss was interrupted by a knock at the door. Eliza sighed and went to answer it, finding Thomas on their porch with a concerned expression. What's wrong? She asked immediately. Nothing's wrong, exactly. But there's someone at the bakery asking for Jack, says he's family. Jack struggled to his feet. Family? I don't have any family. Well, this man says different, says he's your cousin from Texas. William Carter? Jack's face went white. Will's here. You know him? Eliza asked. Yes, he's my cousin, my father's brother's son, but I haven't seen him in 15 years. Not since... Jack trailed off, old pain flickering across his face. Since? Thomas prompted. Since the war ended, since I left Texas. They dressed quickly and walked to town, Jack's mind racing. Will had been like a brother to him growing up, but the war had divided their family, Jack's immediate family supporting the Union, Will's supporting the Confederacy. The last time they'd seen each other, Will had been burying his father, killed in the same battle that took Jack's brothers. Will was sitting in the bakery, hat in his hands, looking uncomfortable. When Jack entered, he stood slowly. The years had aged him, his dark hair now streaked with gray, lines carved deep around his eyes. But the resemblance to Jack was still unmistakable. Jack! Will. They stood there, 15 years of silence between them, until Will finally spoke. I heard you were here. Took me a while to track you down. How did you find me? Pete Hawkins. Ran into him in Amarillo. He said Jack Carter had settled down in Silver Creek, married a baker. Had to see it for myself. Why? Will shifted uncomfortably. Because you're the only family I got left, Jack, and because I've been carrying something for 15 years that needs to be said. Eliza stepped forward. I'm Eliza, Jack's wife. Would you like some coffee? Food? Coffee would be appreciated, ma'am. It's been a long ride. They sat around one of the bakery tables, the atmosphere tense. Eliza poured coffee and set out some bread, then sat beside Jack, her presence steadying. Say what you came to say, Jack said finally. I came to apologize, Will said, for what I said after the war, for blaming you for choosing the Union, for saying you betrayed the family. We all said things. No, let me finish. You were right to choose what you believed. My father, your brothers, they all chose what they believed too. The war killed them, not you. It took me 15 years to understand that, to let go of the anger. Jack's throat was tight. What changed? I got married, had a son. Named him Jack, actually. Will smiled slightly. My wife, Maria, she's the one who made me see sense. Said I was holding on to poison that was killing me slowly. Said families shouldn't be divided by old wars. You have a son? 2, actually. Jack's 8, Samuel's 5. Maria wanted to come, but someone had to watch the ranch. You kept the ranch? What was left of it? Built it back up, piece by piece. It's good land, Jack. Your parents' section is still there, still in the family name. I've been maintaining it, hoping someday you'd come back. Jack was quiet for a long moment. I can't come back, Will. Too many ghosts. I'm not asking you to. I can see you've built a life here. A good life, from what I hear. That rescue at the mine, news travels fast out here. You're a hero in this town. I'm no hero. Maria would disagree. So would those miners' families. Will reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. This is the deed to your parents' land. It's yours by rights. You can sell it, keep it, whatever you want. But it should be yours. Jack stared at the envelope. I don't want it. Then give it to your children someday. From what I remember of Aunt Sarah, she'd want her grandchildren to have something of their heritage. Children are a hope, not a certainty, Eliza said gently. Will looked at her with approval. You're good for him, I can see it. He looks settled, happy. I wasn't sure I'd ever see him that way. He makes me happy too, Eliza said simply. They talked through the night, carefully at first, then with growing ease. Will told them about rebuilding after the war, about meeting Maria at a church social, about the challenges and rewards of raising boys in Texas. Jack shared some of his wandering years, the places he'd seen, carefully avoiding the darker memories. Eliza told stories of Silver Creek, making both men laugh with her descriptions of Mrs. Henshaw's gossip network. As dawn approached, Will stood to leave. I need to start back. Maria will worry if I'm gone too long. You could stay a few days, Jack offered. Meet the town properly. Maybe next time. And there will be a next time if you'll have us. Maria wants to meet the woman who finally tamed Jack Carter. We'd like that, Eliza said before Jack could respond. Families should know each other. Will extended his hand to Jack. I'm glad you stopped running, cousin. Glad you found peace. Jack shook his hand, then pulled him into an embrace. I'm glad you came, Will. I didn't know how much I needed to hear those words until you said them. After Will left, Jack sat at the bakery table, staring at the deed to his parents' land. Eliza sat beside him, patient and quiet. 400 acres, Jack said finally. Good cattle land, or it was. House has probably fallen in by now. It's your heritage. It's my past. This is my future. He gestured around the bakery, then took her hand. You're my future. The two don't have to be exclusive. Maybe someday we'll have a son who wants to be a rancher instead of a baker, or a daughter who dreams of Texas sunsets instead of Colorado mountains. Maybe. Jack folded the deed carefully. For now, I just want to focus on us, on building our life here. The following week, Jack returned to work at Henderson's, his shoulder mostly healed. The town treated him differently now, with a respect that went beyond his marriage to Eliza. The mine rescue had proven something that his months of steady work hadn't quite managed, that he truly belonged to Silver Creek now, that he would risk himself for his neighbors. December arrived with heavy snows that made travel difficult. Jack and Eliza settled into the rhythms of married life. They rose together before dawn, prepared the bakery for the day, then Jack would head to Henderson's while Eliza managed the shop. Evenings were spent by their fire, reading or talking or making love, the outside world held at bay by walls of wood and warmth. 2 weeks before Christmas, Eliza woke violently ill. Jack held her hair as she retched into the chamber pot, worried when even water wouldn't stay down. I'm getting Doc Morrison, he said. It's just something I ate. Eliza, you're burning up. I'm getting the doctor. Doc Morrison arrived within the hour, examining Eliza while Jack paced anxiously in the parlor. When the doctor emerged, his expression was unreadable. Well, Jack demanded, your wife is going to be fine, though she'll feel poorly for a while. What's wrong with her? Doc Morrison smiled. Nothing's wrong, son. She's expecting. Jack sat down hard, the words not quite registering. Expecting? A baby. Probably arrive in early summer, I'd say. Congratulations. After the doctor left, Jack returned to the bedroom where Eliza lay pale but smiling. A baby, she said softly. We're having a baby. Are you happy about it? He asked, sitting beside her. Terrified. Thrilled. Sick, obviously. You? All of that and more. He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. A baby. Our baby. Your mother would be pleased. A grandchild to carry on. Your parents, too. A new generation for the bakery. Or for wandering, it is your child after all. No wandering. This child will have roots so deep they'll reach bedrock. The sickness lasted for weeks, making it impossible for Eliza to work in the bakery. The smell of yeast made her violently ill. Jack took leave from Henderson's with Sam's blessing, and with Sally's help kept the bakery running. It was exhausting, rising at 4 to start the ovens, managing customers all day, but he was determined not to let Eliza's business suffer. You're getting good at this, Thomas observed one morning, watching Jack efficiently shape loaves, almost like a real baker. I had a good teacher. Speaking of which, I have news. Sally and I are engaged. Jack paused in his work. That's wonderful. When? Last night. We're thinking spring wedding after... Thomas gestured vaguely toward the house where Eliza rested. After the baby comes. She'll be thrilled. She's been predicting this for months. She's also been violently ill for weeks, so maybe wait to tell her when she can actually keep food down? By January, Eliza's sickness had passed, replaced by a ravenous appetite and bursts of energy that had her reorganizing the entire cabin. Jack would come home from the bakery to find furniture moved, curtains changed, new projects started. You need to rest, he'd tell her. I've been resting for 2 months. I need to prepare. The baby will be here before we know it. She was showing now, a gentle rounding that filled Jack with a protective tenderness he'd never experienced. He'd find himself watching her when she didn't know, marveling at the changes in her body, the way she'd taken to resting her hand on her belly, already connected to the life growing within. One snowy evening in late January, as they sat by the fire, Eliza suddenly gasped and grabbed Jack's hand, placing it on her stomach. "Feel that?" At first, nothing. Then, a flutter, like a bird's wing brushing against his palm. "Is that the baby? Moving?" Jack kept his hand there, waiting, and was rewarded with another movement, stronger this time, his eyes filled with tears he didn't try to hide. "That's our child," he said in wonder. "That's really our child." "Getting more real every day," Eliza agreed. "Jack, are you disappointed we're having a baby so soon? We've barely been married 3 months." "Disappointed?" "Eliza, I'm 33 years old. I spent half my life wandering, looking for something I couldn't name. Now I have you, our home, and soon our child. I'm not disappointed. I'm grateful. Every day, I wake up grateful." February brought a letter from Will and Maria saying they'd like to visit in the spring after the baby was born. They'd included a bank draft for $200. "For the baby," the note said, "from Uncle Will and Aunt Maria." "That's too generous," Eliza said. "It's family," Jack replied, understanding now what he'd missed for 15 years. This is what family does. March arrived with Chinook winds that melted much of the snow, making everyone restless for spring. Eliza was large now, moving carefully, tired more often than not. Jack had returned to Henderson's, but he rushed home every lunch to check on her, worried whenever she was out of his sight. "I'm not made of glass," she'd tell him, exasperated but fond. "You're carrying our child. That makes you precious." "I was precious before," she teased. "More precious now," he'd reply, kissing her despite her protests about being enormous and ungainly. It was a Tuesday in late March when Jack arrived home for lunch to find Eliza not in the cabin, but in the small stable trying to calm Rosie, who was clearly in distress. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "You shouldn't be out here." "She's in labor," Eliza interrupted. "I didn't know she was even pregnant." Jack looked closer and realized Eliza was right. His faithful mare was about to foal, something he'd never expected from the aging horse. "Must have happened on the trail before I got here," he said. "One of the ranch stallions, probably." They stayed with Rosie through the afternoon, Jack trying repeatedly to send Eliza inside to rest, Eliza refusing to leave. When the foal finally came, a perfect little filly with her mother's coloring and a white star on her forehead, Eliza was crying. "She's beautiful," she whispered. "Like her," Jack said, but he was looking at his wife, not the horses. "We'll call her Hope." "Hope," Eliza repeated. "Perfect." April came with apple blossoms and Eliza's increasing discomfort. The baby was large and active, keeping her awake at night with constant movement. Jack would rub her back, tell stories of the places he'd been, sing the old songs his mother had taught him, anything to help her rest. On April 20th, 2 weeks before the baby was due, Jack woke to find Eliza sitting on the edge of the bed, breathing carefully. "Is it time?" he asked, immediately alert. "I think so. The pain started an hour ago. Why didn't you wake me?" "I wanted to be sure. Jack, I'm scared." He knelt before her, taking her hands. "I'll be right here. Every moment. Men don't usually. I'm not usual men. I'm your husband. I'm staying." He sent Billy Patterson for Doc Morrison and Mrs. Patterson, who delivered half the babies in Silver Creek. Then he helped Eliza walk, held her through the contractions, wiped her face with cool cloths. "I can do this," she said through gritted teeth. "You can do anything," he agreed. "You're the strongest person I know." The labor was long, stretching through the day and into the night. Jack never left her side, despite Doc Morrison's suggestions that he wait outside. When Eliza squeezed his hand hard enough to bruise, he squeezed back. When she cried out in pain, he held her. When she said she couldn't do it anymore, he reminded her of her strength, her courage, their love. Finally, as dawn broke on April 21st, their child entered the world with a lusty cry that was the most beautiful sound Jack had ever heard. "It's a girl," Doc Morrison announced, placing the baby on Eliza's chest. A healthy, perfect girl. Jack looked at his daughter, red-faced, wrinkled, absolutely perfect, and felt his heart expand beyond what he thought possible.
She had Eliza's nose, his dark hair, and when she opened her eyes, they were the same storm cloud gray as his. "She's beautiful," he whispered. "She's ours," Eliza said, exhausted but radiant. "What should we name her?" They'd discussed names for months but hadn't decided. Now, looking at their daughter, Jack knew. "Sarah," he said, "after my mother. Sarah Elizabeth Carter." "Sarah Elizabeth," Eliza repeated. "Yes, perfect." As Eliza slept, recovering from the ordeal, Jack held his daughter, marveling at her tiny fingers, her delicate features, the way she gripped his finger with surprising strength. "Hello, Sarah," he whispered. "I'm your father. I promise to love you, protect you, teach you everything I know. I promise you'll always have a home, always have roots, always know where you belong." The baby made a small sound, almost like agreement, and Jack's eyes filled with tears. This was what he'd been searching for all those years on the trail. Not a place, but a purpose. Not freedom from responsibility, but the freedom that came with choosing his responsibilities. Thomas arrived shortly after sunrise, having been summoned by Billy Patterson. He looked at his niece with wonder. "She's so small." "She's perfect," Jack corrected. "Can I hold her?" Jack carefully transferred the baby to her uncle's arms. Thomas held her like she was made of spun glass, his tough exterior completely melted. "Hello, little one. I'm your Uncle Tommy. I'm going to spoil you terribly and teach you all sorts of things your parents won't approve of." "Thomas," Eliza said, waking, "starting with how to get extra cookies from your mother's bakery." The weeks following Sarah's birth transformed the cabin into a symphony of new sounds, crying that could shake the rafters, soft coos that melted hearts, and the constant whispered conversations between Jack and Eliza as they learned to navigate parenthood. Jack had thought himself prepared, but nothing could have readied him for the fierce protectiveness that consumed him every time he held his daughter. "She has your stubbornness," Eliza said one morning, watching Jack try to soothe Sarah through her fifth crying spell of the night. Dark circles shadowed both their eyes, but there was a contentment in their exhaustion. "She has your appetite," Jack countered, passing the baby to Eliza for feeding. "I swear she eats more than a full-grown cow hand." The bakery remained closed for 2 weeks while Eliza recovered, the longest it had been shuttered since her parents' deaths. The town understood, sending meals and well-wishes, though Mrs. Henshaw made sure everyone knew she'd predicted a girl from the way Eliza had been carrying. When they finally reopened, Jack fashioned a cradle that sat behind the counter, allowing Eliza to work while keeping Sarah close. The baby became the bakery's smallest attraction, with customers lingering to coo over her while purchasing their bread. "She's good for business," Eliza observed one afternoon, as Mrs. Patterson bought twice her usual order just to have an excuse to hold Sarah. "She's good for everything," Jack replied, unable to stop himself from checking the cradle every few minutes, still amazed that this tiny person was his daughter. May brought Will and Maria Carter as promised, arriving in a wagon loaded with gifts from Texas. Maria was a small, dark-haired woman with warm brown eyes and a musical laugh that immediately put everyone at ease. Their boys, Jack Jr. and Samuel, were bundles of energy who stared at their baby cousin with fascination. "She's so little," 8-year-old Jack Jr. said solemnly. "Was I ever that little?" "Smaller," Maria assured him, "and twice as loud." The reunion was easier than Jack had anticipated. Maria had a gift for smoothing awkward moments, and the children provided natural distractions. Watching Will with his sons, seeing the man his cousin had become, Jack felt the last of the old bitterness dissolve. "You've done well for yourself," Will said on their second evening, sitting on the porch while the women talked inside and the boys played in the yard. "This life suits you. Took me long enough to find it. Sometimes the longest journeys lead to the best destinations." Will paused. "I have something to tell you about the land in Texas. Will, just hear me out. I've been working your parents' section along with mine. It's prospered. Cattle, horses, some farming. I've been putting the profits aside, keeping accounts. There's nearly $3,000 in the bank in your name." Jack stared at him. 3,000? 15 years of profits minus maintenance and improvements. "It's yours, Jack. Your inheritance. I didn't earn it. Your parents earned it. Their blood and sweat went into that land. This money is their legacy to you, to Sarah now." Jack was quiet for a long moment, watching his daughter's cousins chase fireflies in the gathering dusk. Keep managing it, he said finally. Take a fair percentage for your trouble. Put the rest in trust for Sarah. Let it grow until she's old enough to decide what she wants from life. You sure? I have everything I need here, but someday Sarah might want options, college maybe, or a stake to start her own business. This gives her choices. Will nodded approvingly. Your mother would be proud of the man you've become. I hope so. The visit lasted a week, during which Maria and Eliza became fast friends, bonding over recipes, child-rearing, and their shared experience of taming Carter men. When they left, it was with promises to visit again and invitations for Jack's family to come to Texas. I like them, Eliza said, waving as the wagon disappeared down the road. I'm glad you have family again. I never stopped having family, Jack said, pulling her close with Sarah nestled between them. I just had to find it. Thomas and Sally's wedding in early June was a smaller affair than Jack and Eliza's had been, but no less joyful. Sarah, at 7 weeks old, was passed from guest to guest like a talisman of good fortune, her presence seeming to bless the union. She's already the belle of the ball, Sally laughed, now officially Eliza's sister-in-law, just like her mother. God help us when she's 16, Jack muttered, already dreading the thought of boys coming to court his daughter. The summer passed in a blur of growth. Sarah learning to smile, then laugh, the garden producing abundantly, the bakery busier than ever with the town's continued expansion. Jack had been promoted to assistant manager at Henderson's, with Sam increasingly talking about retirement. It was during the August harvest celebration that trouble arrived in the form of 3 men who rode into town like they owned it. Jack recognized the type immediately. Guns worn low, eyes that cataloged exits and threats, the kind of men who lived outside the law and liked it that way. They entered the bakery on a Monday morning when Jack was helping Eliza with the early baking, Sarah sleeping peacefully in her cradle. The leader, a scarred man with cold blue eyes, looked around dismissively. We need provisions, he said, not asking. Bread, whatever else you got. Of course, Eliza said carefully, recognizing danger. How much? All of it. Jack stepped forward. The lady asked how much you need. The scarred man's eyes flicked to him, assessing. I know you, Jack Carter, rode with Patterson's outfit back in '71. Jack's blood chilled. He remembered now Luther Cross, a man who'd been run out of the outfit for stealing from the chuck wagon and threatening the cook. Luther. Heard you'd gone soft, settled down, playing shopkeeper. Luther's gaze moved to Eliza, then to the cradle where Sarah was beginning to stir. Got yourself a pretty little family. What do you want, Luther? Like I said, provisions. We're heading to Mexico. Need supplies. He pulled out a roll of bills, tossed them on the counter. That should cover it. It was far more than the bread was worth, which worried Jack more than if they'd tried to steal it. Luther Cross didn't overpay for anything unless he was making a point. Take what you need and go, Jack said. Luther smiled, an expression that didn't reach his eyes. Hospitable as ever, Carter. Boys, load up. His 2 companions began filling bags with bread, purposefully rough, knocking things over. Sarah woke and began crying. Eliza moved to pick her up, but Luther stepped closer. Pretty baby. Looks like her daddy. He reached out as if to touch Sarah's cheek, and Jack moved faster than he had in years, his hand closing on Luther's wrist. Don't. The room went still, tension crackling like lightning before a storm. Luther's companions' hands drifted toward their guns. Jack didn't move, didn't breathe, his grip on Luther's wrist iron hard. Still got some fight in you, Luther said softly. Good. Was worried you'd gone completely soft. He pulled his hand free. We'll be camping outside town for a few days. Might stop by again. They left with the bread, the bell jangling discordantly behind them. Eliza was holding Sarah tight, her face pale. Who were those men? Trouble, Jack said grimly. Luther Cross is wanted in 3 territories. Murder, robbery, worse. I need to talk to the sheriff. Sheriff Ben Watson was a good man, but old, near retirement, used to dealing with drunk cowboys and petty theft, not hardened criminals. He listened to Jack's concerns with a frown. I can't run them out of town without cause, Ben said. They paid for what they took. They're planning something. Luther Cross doesn't pass through anywhere without leaving blood behind. I'll keep an eye on them.
Best I can do unless they actually break the law. Jack knew it wasn't enough. That evening, he cleaned his gun for the first time since arriving in Silver Creek, checked his rifle, made sure both were loaded. Eliza watched from the doorway. "You're scaring me." "I'm being careful. Luther holds grudges, and I once testified against him to Patterson about the theft. Got him thrown off the drive. That was years ago. Men like Luther don't forget." That night, Jack barely slept, starting at every sound. When dawn came without incident, he began to hope Luther would simply move on. But as he was opening Henderson's store, Billy Patterson came running. "Mr. Jack, the sheriff wants you. There's been trouble at the bank." Jack ran, finding a crowd gathered outside the First National Bank of Silver Creek. The front window was shattered, and Sheriff Watson stood inside, looking grim. The bank manager, Harold Hutchins, Walter's father, sat in a chair, blood running from a gash on his head. "They hit us just as I was opening," Harold said shakily. 3 men, masked, but I recognized the leader's voice. "That scarred man from yesterday." "How much did they take?" Jack asked. "Everything in the safe. Nearly $10,000. Harold looked sick. Some of that was the mine payroll. If we can't pay the miners— Jack understood the implications. No pay meant the miners would leave, the mine would close, and Silver Creek would begin dying. One robbery could destroy everything the town had built. "Which way did they go?" Jack asked the sheriff. "South, toward the Canyonlands. I'm forming a posse." "I'm going with you." "Jack, no," Eliza said. She'd arrived with Sarah, having heard the commotion. "You have a family now." "That's why I have to go. This is our town, our home. If we don't defend it, who will?" The posse consisted of 6 men: Jack, Sheriff Watson, Thomas, Carl Brennan from the mine, and 2 ranch hands from the Mosley place. They rode hard, following tracks that were deliberately easy to follow. "It's a trap," Jack said when they found the trail leading into Skeleton Canyon, a maze of rocks and narrow passages. "Luther wants us to follow." "We can't just let them go," Carl argued. "That money will do us no good if we're dead." Jack studied the terrain with eyes that had learned to read danger. "There's another way. Higher trail comes out above the main canyon. I saw it when I was hunting last fall." "That'll take hours longer," Sheriff Watson said. "But we'll be above them, not riding into their guns." They took Jack's route, a treacherous path that had the horses struggling for footing. By afternoon, they'd reached a ridge overlooking the main canyon. Below, Luther and his men waited in perfect ambush position, watching the lower trail. "How do we get down there without being seen?" Thomas asked. "We don't," Jack said. "We wait for dark." It was the longest afternoon of Jack's life since the war, lying on that ridge, watching the outlaws below, thinking about Eliza and Sarah waiting at home. As the sun set, Luther's men built a fire, confident the posse had given up or gotten lost. "Now," Jack whispered. They descended carefully, silently, years of frontier living serving them well. They were within 50 feet when one of Luther's men spotted them. "Posse!" he shouted, going for his gun. The night exploded in gunfire. Jack had positioned them well. They had cover while the outlaws were exposed by their own fire. The fight was brief but vicious. One of the ranch hands took a bullet in the shoulder. Thomas winged one of Luther's men. The second outlaw threw down his gun, surrendering, but Luther himself had vanished into the darkness. "Find him," Sheriff Watson ordered, but Jack was already moving, following instinct more than tracks. He found Luther trying to reach the horses, the stolen money in saddlebags over his shoulder. They faced each other in the moonlight, 2 men who'd chosen different paths from the same beginning. "Should have stayed out of it, Carter," Luther said. "This wasn't your fight." "You made it mine when you threatened my family." "I never threatened them." "Your presence was threat enough." Luther went for his gun, but Jack was faster, had always been faster, even in the old days. The shot echoed through the canyon. Luther looked down at the spreading red stain on his chest, surprised. "Guess you haven't gone completely soft," he said, and fell. Jack stood there for a moment, gun still raised, feeling the weight of what he'd done. Not with regret. Luther had made his choice. but with the recognition that the violence he'd tried to leave behind would always be part of him, ready when needed to protect what mattered. They rode back to Silver Creek with the stolen money, Luther's body tied across a horse, the two surviving outlaws bound and subdued. The town greeted them as heroes, but Jack felt no pride, only exhaustion and the desperate need to hold his family. Eliza was waiting at the cabin, Sarah in her arms. She said nothing as Jack dismounted, nothing as he walked to her, nothing as he pulled both of them into an embrace that lasted long enough for Sarah to protest being squished. "It's done," he said finally. "I know, Mrs. Henshaw already spread the word. You saved the town." "I did what needed doing. You always do." She pulled back to look at him. "Are you all right?" "I killed a man tonight, first time since the war. A man who would have destroyed our town, our lives." "I know, and I'd do it again to protect you and Sarah. That's what scares me, how easy it was to become that man again." Eliza touched his face gently. "You didn't become that man again. That man was alone, running, empty. You're a husband, a father, a valued member of this community. You use those old skills, yes, but for love, not for emptiness. There's a difference." That night, after Sarah was asleep, Jack and Eliza lay entwined, not making love but holding each other, reaffirming life after brushing so close to death. "I was terrified," Eliza admitted in the darkness, "that you wouldn't come back, that Sarah would grow up with only stories of her father." "I'll always come back. Always." "You can't promise that." "Then I promise to try with everything I have to come back. Is that enough?" "It has to be." The next morning brought unexpected visitors, a delegation from the town council, led by Mayor Thompson and Harold Hutchins. They gathered in the bakery, hats in hands, looking formal and serious. "Jack," the mayor began, "we've come to make you an offer." "Oh?" "Sheriff Watson is retiring. After yesterday, after what you did, the town council voted unanimously. We want you to be the new sheriff." Jack nearly dropped the bread pan he was holding. "I'm not a lawman." "You've got the skills," Harold pointed out. "You've proven you'll defend this town. And more importantly, you're part of this community. The sheriff needs to be someone we trust, someone with roots here." "I have a job, a family to support." "The sheriff position pays $90 a month," the mayor said, "plus housing, though you've got your own place. It's a good wage, Jack, and the town needs you." Jack looked at Eliza, who was listening silently. "I need to discuss this with my wife." "Of course. Take your time. But not too much time. Watson wants to retire by month's end." After they left, Jack and Eliza stood in the bakery, Sarah babbling happily in her cradle between them. "Sheriff," Eliza said, testing the word. "Sheriff Jack Carter. It's dangerous. So is mining. So is ranching. So is just living out here." She moved closer to him. "But it's also important. The town does need someone like you. Someone who understands both sides of the law, who's seen enough violence to know when it's necessary and when it's not. You'd be the sheriff's wife. That comes with its own burdens. I'm already the woman who tamed the mysterious drifter. I'm used to being talked about." She smiled. "Besides, the extra money would mean we could expand. Maybe hire help for the bakery, build an addition to the cabin for more children." "More children? Sarah needs siblings. I was thinking 3 more at least." Jack laughed, pulling her close. 3 more? You're trying to kill me. Never. I need you around for at least 50 more years." "Only 50? "Minimum." He kissed her then, long and deep, Sarah gurgling approval from her cradle. When they broke apart, his decision was made. "I'll take it. The sheriff position." "I know." "You know?" "Jack Carter, I knew you'd be sheriff the moment you stood up to Luther in this bakery. You can't help protecting people. It's who you are." The badge ceremony was held the last Friday of August, the whole town gathering to watch Sheriff Watson pin the star on Jack's chest. Sarah, now 4 months old and grabbing at everything shiny, immediately tried to eat it. "That's my girl," Thomas laughed, already keeping her father humble. As the crowd dispersed, Pete Hawkins appeared. He'd been passing through again and stayed for the ceremony. "Sheriff Carter," he said with a grin, "never thought I'd see the day. Life's full of surprises." "That it is." Pete looked around the town, at Eliza talking with the other women, at Sarah charming everyone who came near. You know, I've been thinking about settling down myself. This wandering gets old. There's a ranch for sale just north of town, Jack offered. The Garrett place. Wait, that was our old place. The Morrison Ranch, then. Good land. Might look into it. Pete tipped his hat. Congratulations, Sheriff. You found what we were all looking for out there on the trail. What's that? A reason to stop looking. September brought the first hints of fall and Jack's first real test as sheriff. A dispute between miners and ranchers over water rights threatened to turn violent. Jack mediated with patience he hadn't known he possessed, finding a compromise that satisfied both parties. You're good at this, Eliza observed that evening as he finally came home, exhausted from a day of negotiations. I just remembered what my mother used to say. Everyone's right in their own mind, so you have to find the place where their rights overlap. Your mother was a wise woman. She would have loved you. Jack picked up Sarah, who immediately grabbed for his badge. Both of you. October arrived with news that made Eliza cry happy tears. Sally was pregnant, due in the spring. The two women immediately began planning, sharing remedies for morning sickness, arguing playfully over names. Our children will grow up together, Sally said dreamily. Best friends, maybe more someday. Let's let them learn to walk first, Eliza laughed. The bakery had become more than just a business. It was the social heart of Silver Creek. Women gathered there in the mornings to gossip and plan. Men stopped by in the afternoons, pretending they needed bread but really wanting to hear the latest news. And always, Sarah held court from her cradle, the unofficial mascot of Monroe's Bakery. One afternoon in early November, a young woman entered the shop, travel-worn and obviously pregnant, with the hollow look of someone who'd been hungry too long. She counted coins carefully, trying to determine what she could afford. Just the day-old bread, please, she said quietly. Whatever's cheapest. Eliza glanced at Jack, who was helping behind the counter. He recognized the look in his wife's eyes, the same look she'd had when he'd first walked in, lost and searching. We don't have any day-old bread, Eliza lied smoothly, wrapping up 2 fresh loaves. But these didn't rise quite right. Can't sell them at full price, 20 cents for both. The woman's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Are you new to town? Eliza asked gently. Passing through. My husband, he died on the trail. I'm trying to get to Denver, where my sister lives. Jack stepped forward. We might have work for you if you're interested. My wife needs help in the bakery, especially with the baby. Room and board included, plus wages. The woman, her name was Ruth Morgan, stared at them in disbelief. Why would you help me? Because someone helped us once, Eliza said simply. Sometimes that's reason enough. Ruth proved to be a hard worker and good with Sarah, who took to her immediately. Within a month, she'd become part of their extended family, her own baby due just weeks after Sally's. You can't keep collecting strays, Thomas teased one evening at Sunday dinner, the table full with Jack and Eliza, Sally and himself, Ruth, and even Pete Hawkins, who'd bought the Morrison Ranch and was slowly becoming part of the community. Why not? Eliza challenged. Jack was a stray. Look how well that turned out. Best stray you ever took in, Jack agreed, bouncing Sarah on his knee. December brought heavy snows and a crisis that tested Jack's skills as both sheriff and man. A family of settlers, the Johanssons, had gotten lost in a blizzard coming over the pass. Their 8-year-old son made it to town, frostbitten and delirious, babbling about his parents and sisters still trapped in their wagon. Jack organized a rescue party immediately, despite the worsening storm. I need volunteers, he announced in the saloon, knowing that's where most of the men had gathered. Every man stood up. They found the Johansson family huddled in their broken wagon, nearly frozen but alive. It took 2 days to get them back to town, Jack and the others taking turns breaking trail through chest-deep snow. Mrs. Johansson lost 2 toes to frostbite. Mr. Johansson nearly lost his left hand. But they survived, and the town rallied to help them, finding them shelter, work, and a new start. You're a hero again, Eliza said as Jack finally returned home, exhausted and half-frozen himself. Just doing my job. No, you're doing more than that. You're building something here, Jack. A town where people matter, where strangers become family. Christmas Eve found the bakery full of people. An impromptu celebration that had started with Eliza offering free cookies to children and grown into a full gathering. Sarah, now 8 months old and pulling herself up on furniture, was passed from person to person, delighting in the attention. "This is what you've built," Jack told Eliza as they watched the crowd. "This community, this warmth. The bakery isn't just about bread, it's about bringing people together." "We built it," she corrected, "together." As midnight approached and snow fell softly outside, Reverend Mills called for quiet. "Let us pray," he said, and the room bowed their heads. "Lord, we thank you for this community, for the bonds that tie us together, for the strangers who've become family. We thank you for Sheriff Carter, who protects us, for Eliza, who feeds us, for young Sarah, who reminds us of hope and new beginnings. Bless this town, Lord. Help us continue to be a light in the wilderness, a place where all are welcome, where love conquers fear." "Amen," the room chorused. Later, after everyone had gone home, Jack and Eliza stood in their cabin, Sarah finally asleep in her crib. Through the window, Silver Creek slept under its blanket of snow, peaceful and safe. "Do you ever think about it?" Eliza asked. "How different our lives would be if you hadn't stopped here. Every day, I'd still be drifting, probably dead by now. You'd have married someone else, someone who didn't appreciate what an amazing woman you are. Or I'd have stayed a spinster baker, growing old alone. Never. You're too full of life for that." He pulled her close. "Eliza, I need to tell you something." "What?" "I'm happy. Completely, absolutely happy. For the first time in my life, I have no desire to be anywhere else, to be anyone else. This life we've built, our daughter, the new baby you haven't told me about yet." "How did you know?" she gasped. "Same way I knew the first time. You're glowing, and you've been avoiding the smell of coffee for a week." She laughed, burying her face in his chest. "I wanted to wait until after Christmas to tell you. Best Christmas gift ever. Well, second best. Sarah was first. We're going to need that addition to the cabin. Pete's good with carpentry. He owes me for not arresting him that time he got drunk and serenaded Mrs. Henshaw. That was you who got him drunk. Details." He kissed her forehead. "Another baby. Sarah's going to be a big sister. Think we can handle 2? With you beside me. We can handle anything." As they prepared for bed, Jack took one last look out the window. 5 years ago, he'd been alone on the trail, probably huddled by a meager fire, trying to stay warm. Now he had a home, a family, a purpose. The wanderer had finally found his destination, not in a place, but in the people who'd given him reason to stay. "What are you thinking about?" Eliza asked, sliding her arms around him from behind. "Just remembering that first day, when I bought all your bread. 12 loaves. Mrs. Henshaw still talks about it. Best 12 loaves I ever bought." "Even though you gave them all away?" "Especially because I gave them away. It meant I had to come back. And you kept coming back. Every day for the rest of my life, Eliza Carter. Every single day." Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing Silver Creek in pristine white, covering the paths and roads but not erasing them, simply preparing them for new footprints, new journeys, new stories. In the cabin by Miller's Bend, a former cowboy turned sheriff held his baker wife while their daughter slept, their second child grew, and their future stretched ahead like an unwritten book, full of possibility and promise. The wandering was over. The living had just begun.